Nigeria's Debt Management Office is set for a 500 billion naira Treasury bills auction today as investors' appetite for money market instruments rises. On Tuesday, the Central Bank of Nigeria held an OMO auction and offered 500 billion naira after the 1.1 trillion naira maturity. Traders at Access Bank expect a calm market as investors position for next week's bond auction. Tobechukwu Ikpe, the Treasury Team Member at Access Bank, joins me now for a market update. Thank you so much for your time today, Tobechukwu. And I'd like to first start with what we saw play out here with the MPC decision here. And I'd like you to speak to what rates at these levels will mean for the market down the line to the next meeting.
Hi, thank you for having me. So, as you saw yesterday, the MPC held up parameters stable. That was in line with market expectations. There was no need to do a rate cut at this time because the inflation trajectory is not yet downward, it's firmly downwards as market participants will expect before they can start a rate cutting cycle. So their stance and tone right now is just a wait and see approach. When the next couple of inflation numbers come out, if the trend continues to be downward, then we might see the interest rates start to reduce. Or for what it means in the near term, it means that we've come to the height of the hiking cycle. So that spurred bullish sentiments in the bond market today as market participants are starting to buy up all their available bonds with the expectation that there will be no more interest rate rises in the medium term.
But looking at the liquidity management in Nigeria here, and I'd like you to speak to what we're seeing play out with those OMO auctions here, with the recent offering here. And what does the current bid to cover ratio and stop rate signal?
It signals that there is ample liquidity in the system. The CBN last year did a lot of monetary tightening via the OMO auction, so they mopped up a lot of liquidity out of the system, and we've seen some of those maturities start to come back. Yesterday we saw 1.1 trillion mature, and they floated 500 billion and so 655 billion. So they will need to maintain that the space of those auctions because there are still more maturities coming in May and June. For example, next week there is a maturity of about 980 billion. So we expect that there will be another auction soon just to manage the liquidity levels in the money market system.
All right, now it's good to talk about that, talking about the near-term liquidity preferences and what we can expect. But what's your view on the investor risk appetite?
The investor risk appetite for the last few days has been largely muted, given there's no volatility. But last week, given the improved macro sentiment, that's what has been driving investor appetite recently. We have not seen anything on the local side that has really changed much. The local tone is largely stability. So when the macro risk appetite improves, when there's risk on sentiment generally, like last week after the trade pause between US and China, we saw bullish sentiments in the fixed income space last week and also some in the FX space. So the macro sentiment is generally what's driving sentiments here. For the local market, stability is the key word, and investors just continue to cherry pick. They'll continue to buy up fixed income securities where they feel comfortable.
But in terms of how are they positioning then for the bond auction next week?
In terms of positioning for the bond auction, we expect appetite to be there as well. They are comfortable at 20% levels. That's where bids are on those on-the-run bonds. Well, we expect the bond auction to close at similar levels next week as well. So it's up to the DMO what they want to sell, but we will see, given that they are raising a sukuk this week as well, so we might not see them borrow much at the bond auction. So wherever rate they close, that will give an indication of where the trajectory of rates is going forward.
All right, interesting times ahead, but thank you so much for your time today. Tobechukwu Ikpe, the Treasury Team Member at Access Bank.